Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch. So we've had really interesting morning discussion looking at landscape management and greening this palm oil supply chain. So I think this afternoon we're going to turn our attention to a very critical actor in the plantation sector and one that is often misunderstood, the smallholders. First, I'd like to thank my esteemed panelists for taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you very much. At the same time, I'd like to express my gratitude to some of you in the audience, especially Cargill, for giving us really useful practical suggestions and inputs for this panel discussion and for making it possible. Thank you, everyone. So first, I'd like to just very briefly introduce my panelists before handing the floor over to them. I've got Pak Nano, who is a smallholder himself and head of the Amanah Cooperative, which is a legal entity representing 349 independent smallholders in Riyadh. He is accompanied by Pak Irwan Gunawan from the WWF Indonesia. WWF Indonesia has been instrumental in helping Amanah get RSPO certification. And then on my right side, I've got Mr. Hendry Young, who is from Solidaridad, an NGO that has been working very actively on the ground both in Indonesia and Malaysia in supporting smallholders. So Henry will tell us more about the program that Solidaridad does. Henry is also the coordinator of this new initiative called the Asian Sustainable Palm Oil Network, ASPN, and he'll tell us more about it later. And finally, I've got Mr. Stephan Lynen from Clariant. Clariant is a specialty chemicals company. They are also behind the SPOT scheme, which is the Sustainable Palm Oil Traceability in Sabah program, in partnership with other companies and NGOs as well. So Stephen will tell us more about his company's sustainability policy and also more about SPOTS. It was launched at the RT13 in November last year, so it would be good to hear from him the progress on SPOTS so far. I think for now, I'll turn the floor over to Pak Nano to begin with first, for you to share some of the motivations behind Amanah Cooperative. How did this group get together, and what's the motivation to want to be certified? What were some of the challenges you faced, and what are some of the sort of next steps forward?
Selamat siang, makasih waktu yang diberikan. Kesempatan ini sangat berharga buat saya. Kemudian mohon maaf, saya pakai bahasa Indonesia.
Thank you, everyone. This is a very good opportunity for me to present here, and he apologized for being unable to deliver his thought in English.
Untuk latar belakang kenapa Asosiasi Amanah bergabung ataupun ikut atau tertarik dengan sertifikasi RSPO, kami petani termotivasi oleh perusahaan terdekat, dalam hal ini adalah perusahaan ASEAN Agri, kemudian ada tawaran tentang sertifikasi RSPO, maka kami pada saat itu kami sambut, baik untuk petani kedepannya dengan RSPO itu.
The primary motivation that drives the groups of farmers, Amanah, was that they were encouraged by the companies that is adjacent to their farms.
Dan salah satu tujuan kami adalah untuk RSPO, bahwasanya untuk petani swadaya bisa, dan kami juga bisa menunjukkan untuk sertifikasi RSPO tahun 2013.
And it puts a challenge for this group of farmers to prove that the RSPO certification is also possible for the smallholders.
Kemudian juga saya juga tidak hanya berhenti di RSPO, mungkin dari RSPO lah kami berangkat, kami juga akan berbuat lebih baik lagi dan akan menjadikan modelnya ke depan jadi pilot project untuk petani kami swadaya Amanah di Provinsi Riau, Indonesia. Kemudian juga kami juga berharap kepada para pihak untuk mendukung kami juga akan ke depan akan lebih baik lagi.
The challenges that is faced by the communities now is really to maintain the certification. They agree not to stop only to obtain the certification, but using this RSPO certification as a starting point to move further and to advance the community's livelihood. And if I may add a bit from the perspective of WWF Indonesia, the thinking behind this RSPO certification for the independent smallholders was really that there was a general assumption back in 2010, 2011 that RSPO certification is designed only for the large-scale plantations, for the large-scale companies, and it creates barrier for the 42% of the smallholders, including independent ones in Indonesia, to access the global market. And we did a quiet, prudent selection in the mid-2011 to make and prove that the independent smallholders can also meet the global sustainability standard that is RSPO. So we worked with this group of communities for about 18 months, and it's a very intensive program with the close support from Asian Agri and Carrefour Foundation at that time. We assign our field staff to work daily with them and introduce from the very beginning the principle of the good agricultural practices and trying to get these communities understand the technical difficulties in understanding the requirements from the RSPO standard. And this already sets a new paradigm, not only for this particular farmers group, but also it encouraged other farmers group, other supporting institutions to replicate and expand the certification for the smallholders. Nonetheless, we still see some underlying challenge to make this independent smallholder certification as a norm in the major producer countries like Indonesia as well as Malaysia. That the first thing is that it's likely that any smallholders in Indonesia still needs technical facilitation from the external organizations, external parties, since the improvement cost and also the technical know-how in meeting the standards still leaves a huge gap. Not to mention that the background of the most of the farmers in Indonesia are deemed to be lacked of the capacities, but also we think that the distribution of the smallholders in Indonesia are quite challenging. But bear in mind that over 60 to 70% of these smallholders are in Sumatra, and for the Riau alone, there are, well, it is believed on the official statistic figures that 600,000 hectares of the plantations in Riau is managed by the smallholders. So I would like to emphasize that cost still the primary challenge. Second is the gap of knowledge. Third one is that there should be a more concrete support from the market, from the buyers. We understood that in the first 2 years, Unilever has been very kind to support this particular group of the farmers by buying the book and claim certificates. But they are still very much welcome for more substantial support from the government and also from the companies.
Do you have anything else to add, Pak Nano? In terms of the support that you would need from governments and companies to elaborate on Pak Irwan's point?
Saya juga berharap kepada semua pihak yang berkaitan dengan pendampingan kami buat petani swadaya ke depan. Harapan kami yang pertama bisa memperhatikan lebih kepada petani swadaya yang lain. Kemudian saya juga berharap petani swadaya di samping sustainable untuk kebun ataupun kebunnya, saya juga berharap ada mil untuk swadaya yang sustainable. Jadi petani swadaya yang ke depan bisa membawa lebih baik lagi di tingkat perekonomian ataupun masa depan anak cucu mereka.
Their expectations are primarily that they need capacity building and support from the government, from the companies to enable them to help expand the certified areas from the independent smallholders. Second is that they have a business plan to level up their scope of the operation, and they expect that they will be able to set up an owned mills that is fully operated by the smallholders. And that needs, clearly that needs external support.
Thank you very much, Pak Nano and Pak Irwan. I'll now hand the floor over to Hendry. If you could share with us more about Solidaridad's programs in Malaysia and Indonesia, some of the challenges that the smallholders face, as well as how you think the initiative ASPN will make a difference in helping them to become more sustainable.
Oh, thank you. In Solidaridad, we are actually a Netherlands government-funded organization through this farmer support program. We are working with our partners very closely in the areas where palm oil are actually emerging, I would say, areas like West Kalimantan. Our approach are very much tailored to the needs of these areas, because if you look at West Kalimantan, especially the district Sintang, there are abundant of rubber, and then they are like some palm oil farmers, which is having very limited knowledge, because they witness that the palm oil business is better than farmer, people just switch. So, for instance, one of our approach with a partner of us, a credit union with 140,000 members, 40% of those are these new palm oil farmers, and the others are rubber. We are actually helping them to see what if it's possible to kind of switch the business as usual. Hereditary, they are doing this slash and burn because it's cheap. And that, I guess, contribute a lot to the haze we have here in Malaysia and in Singapore, and same thing as other parts of Indonesia. What we did was try to give sufficient knowledge in terms of planting and then the use of fertilizer, and then how to kind of walk them through to identify good seedling, because that is actually the major problem in Indonesian plantation. The seedlings are not genuine in terms of quality and longevity. It's questionable. Of course, the access to finance itself is a problem, and the way they form is basically on trial and error. So working with our partner, who happened to be a credit union, they're supplying these loans for about 60,000 farmers, and then we kind of work with them to see how we can benefit their farmers, giving them training, GAP, good agricultural practices, and loans, and then access to fertilizer, access to financial literature, because most of them do not really know how to kind of manage the business. In return, we started with plotting the map, their land, averagely, I would say 1.5 hectares to 2.5 hectares, knowing where they are, and then if they are to accept our support in terms of loan, financial training, GAP training, access to fertilizer, then they have to commit. Especially for those who are farming adjacent to forested area, we do this monitoring on monthly basis, whether to see they are encroaching actually, because one of our mandate is actually to kind of reduce this by increasing the yield. They are doing pretty bad, but we are endeavoring to kind of increase 10 to 15, assuming that with the increment of yield, they will stop from encroaching adjacent forests. So we did this monitoring and overlay the prior and aftermath to see if they really kind of stick to what is the promise. Otherwise, we have to kind of withdraw our loans and we have to cut off the access to fertilizer. So this is actually educate. It's a stick and carrot thing. We understand that if the stick is too big, then probably the carrot could be a little bit discouraging. This is the approach we have in Kalimantan, and of course we have other approach in Jambi, which is much related to RSPO certifications. We work closely with the mill. We establish so-called farmer groups, and then leading them to RSPO certification, because in Jambi we have RSPO mills. That is not the case in West Kalimantan. So leading to a certain certification, which we believe is a driver, seemingly not possible in West Kalimantan, but we are still working on that. Lastly, in terms of the Asian Sustainable Palm Oil Network, yeah, we believe that if we put too much pressure on the producer, you know, it's like the stick is too big and the carrot is too small. So we don't think that if there is no balance of demand and supply, pushing only the supply side, it would not be possible. And we know that up till this moment, I think the sustainable, correct me if I'm wrong, sustainable palm oil smallholder is only less than 1%. And I think that countries, major consumer countries, which is us, Indonesia, and then India, and then China, has to kind of realize that to sustain the globe, I mean, they have to start thinking about sustainability. I noticed from the session we have early in the morning that there are questions. Why China? What about sustainability? Why? I think it is time. I think we as Solidaridad tried a couple of times last year to gauge the interests of the private sector, mentioning Julong, who has huge plantation in central Kalimantan, and I think under this new China government, one green belt policy, if I'm not mistaken, is correct, yes? One belt, yes, policy, I think they start to pay attention to sustainability. So we venture into big companies in China, and they have a trip to Netherlands, where our headquarters is, and then see what actually is defined as sustainability. From there, I think we got some attention that, okay, maybe we should start thinking of doing things sustainably. In India, we're doing the same, but we start with a second largest importer of palm oil, which is Ruchi, and we see how actually we can kind of start with a simple framework. Not meaning that we will impose certain certification into that, but let's see how they define sustainability from their point of view. For Indonesia, I appreciate a lot of colleagues here, NGOs and governments, which are actually doing work for Indonesia in terms of sustainability. I think there's much work to do, and we hope that we can work together in Indonesia. And I believe the ASEAN platform that also includes Malaysia, it's at the very early beginning step. We are now doing scoping at the respective country to identify where the problems is, what is needed, and then plan forward to unite these 4 countries' approach. It will be a demand and supply. So we believe that if we can introduce sustainability to India, perhaps, to China, and of course to Indonesia itself, I think we can increase the volume of the CSPO. So I guess that's from my end. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. I think you're very right in saying that we need to start targeting some of the major consuming countries of palm. So in this case, India and China is some countries that our institute would like to engage with more as well. So we'll definitely be keeping in touch with you on how ASPN goes in the next few months. And now I'll turn the floor over to you, Stephan. If you could share with us, please, the progress on the sports scheme, which the objective is to help 500 smallholders get RSPO certification by the year 2020, and also increase their quality of life and productivity by about 20%. So maybe you could just shed some light on the rationale behind this particular scheme, and also incorporating, Clariant's business perspectives on, how does this fit in with Clariant's business model, and what are some of the key takeaways from a corporate-driven smallholders program that you can share with the audience?
Good afternoon. So enough introduction of myself. Before I come to the spots project, which I think when we talk about small producers, smallholders, small growers, the question to engage, to change behavior, to change mindset, and at the end to create impact, is fundamentally also a question of the model. How do we actually do this? And I think this is the uniqueness of our project Spots. But just before, let me give you just a brief context. So I'm representing Clariant, which is definitely not too familiar for most of you. We are a specialty chemical company, so traditionally we're somewhere in the middle of the value chain. And if you're in the middle of the value chain, you have to differentiate yourself differently. And for us, sustainability and innovation are 2 elements which are strategic pillars to ourselves in which we do differentiate. In which we do differentiate to our competitors in the market by offering sustainable solutions. And a comment to some of the earlier panel discussions, we see this highly rewarded also in the market, actually also in the Chinese market. To one of the comments before. The Chinese market sometimes when they pick up a certain kind of sustainable offering, they would even leapfrog. They would go beyond the current standards and take it up. And we see this coming. You talked about how do we find this in other consuming markets more and more. Maybe not yet so much on the palm oil side in China, but yet to come. So for us, innovation, sustainability are differentiators. So they're part of a business model. Our vision works along also a triple P impact, which is not about pulp and paper, but it's about performance, planet, and people. Among these elements, we work. Among these elements, our strategy is focused on, and that's where sustainability is part of a business model, actually. So sustainability at the end is also rewarded, recognized. We are a member of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which is a pretty tough index to enter and to maintain being in. We're proud we are. We are silver awarded. We have a lot of recognitions in this regard, which just is, I would say, a label and a testimony if you take this really serious. If we talk about our business, our biggest business is in the industrial and consumer specialty business, which I represent. I'm business responsible for this business in Asia Pacific. And in this business, one element is also the consumer market, where probably many of you are attached to when you use cosmetics, hair products, etc., which are produced by our customers. Here we also consume a lot of palm oil. If I say a lot, I mean it from our perspective. If you look on the total palm oil market, it's less than 1%, which we are using. So it's a drop in an ocean, but for us it's a significant leverage to take. Bringing sustainability now in the palm oil chain, we are working on 3 different pillars. The first one, and actually also sequentially, is what we started, is start with ourselves. What do we do? So for us, it was very clear that we have to understand and comply and certify our part of the value chain. So very simply, we are rolling out a mass balance certification of all our chemical specialty intermediate plants, which are dealing with palm oil derivatives. And I'm happy to say that we have achieved this now for Asia, and for Europe, Middle East, and North America, Latin America, we will complete by end of this year. The second question is then, how do we interact with our interfaces, so our supply side and our customers? So this is much about transparency and particularly traceability systems, which we build together with our customers and with our suppliers to engage them as well with the same ambition which we have. The third element is going beyond, is the question of projects, how you can actually change even more. And this is also where spots fit in, where we thought, when we went through our learning exercise, and I also individually went through a magnificent learning exercise over the last 3 years, when we saw this huge amount, 40% plus of smallholder, small growers impacting the palm oil market, how do we reach them? It's easier on the, as I said, in the second pillar when we talk about traceability, transparency system, to engage suppliers and value chains with bigger conglomerates. But how to address smallholders and small producers? So here we came up with our SPOTS initiative. And very simply said, it is a multi-party project where we engage a full value chain to deliver an economic, social, and environmental impact. Now, what does that mean? So, going through the partners and the value chain, and this time I don't start at the palm fruit, I start on the other side. So I start with you, consumers. So you go to the shop, you buy a shampoo. So the shampoo you buy eventually from L'Oreal. So L'Oreal is in our SPOTS project. So they have the chance through marketing campaigns to influence market and consumer awareness and to start to eventually address consumer behavior change. The second part in the value chain is us, Clariant. So we provide L'Oreal with certain specialties which they use in their formulations. The next part is a joint venture which we have as Clariant with a company called Wilma, which you're probably aware with, which is delivering commodities to us, which is also part of that value chain, still going into that shampoo as an example. So Global Amines then is sourcing oleochemical derivatives like fatty acids, fatty chloride, fatty alcohol. And this is coming from Wilma, from the refinery. Now Wilma goes back and said, where do we take the oleochemicals from? Well, they take it from the palm oil. So it goes back at the end to the mill. And then we go back from the mill. So where's now the small producer? Well, there he is. And the project which we are talking about has a regional focus in Sabah, which is the Malaysian part north of Borneo, where we focus on 500 small producers, as has been said. And these 500 small producers, we address in this full value chain. So there is a full engaged party from actually addressing consumer behavior to the farmer. And this is what I heard from Nano before. He spoke about cost, knowledge, and market support. Cost, knowledge, and market support. So how does it all work? Well, simply, first of all, cost. There must be an economic element to such a model. It cannot be only social, environmental. You have to also to change behavior of a farmer, of the whole value chain, of consumers. You have to have an economic element. So we are giving these 500, or we will give these 500 small producers in the Sabah area access to this value chain, access to a global market, and outlet. In addition, similar like Hendry said, is we're giving them also, I forgot one very important party. We have an NGO also on the ground, which is called Wild Asia, very strong, very dedicated field workers who help the farmers to learn. And they learn about yield improvements. Our ambition is to improve the yield at least by 20%. We also educate them in use of fertilizers, crop protection. We educate them also in the way you actually manage a plant. There's a lot of learnings, of course, which a big player like Wilma through an NGO can deliver to a small producer. So there is a real economic incentive. There is actually financial incentive to do this. On the counter side, we expect then from the small producers to comply to the social and environment standards which we all desire. And that is the give and the take. And here we create the buy-in. So in the whole project, the scope is these 500 small producers in this Sabah region, which over 5 years should deliver 70,000 tons of FFB into this value chain, get certified, get traceable. It actually goes even beyond RSPO mass balance certification, which we aspire, but provide this value chain with an output which is sustainable. And I say a 5-year project, but once we have lifted it up to this level, they will have a yield efficiency advantage, they will be in the market, they will be certified, they will comply, they would be in this practice, they would even have a market advantage going forward. So the 5 years is just the project timeline to get them there, which we aspire. So we believe that this kind of a project where you actually collaborate along a value chain, multi-party, by the way, very complex. We heard today about sustainability definitions also. Everybody has a different one. But we believe that collaboration projects are the future and are the ones which can really drive change and impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephan. Now, all of you have spoken about getting smallholders certified. So my question to all the panelists now, following up on some of the points that you've mentioned as well, is, are certifications the end goal for smallholders? Or is there more to sustainability when we talk about sustainability for smallholders? And, you know, Stephan has mentioned about economic incentives. What about reducing the smallholders' risk to external threats like climate change or any other external factors that we can't envisage, or basically increasing their quality of life in general, ensuring that, you know, their healthcare is taken care of, that sustainability in a more holistic manner. So can I get the panelists' views on, is certification the end goal? Are we really looking at something beyond that?
Thank you. I think, yes, I just mentioned just now, to us, certification is a driver, and we do believe there are a lot of things to cover after the certifications. And it doesn't mean that when you get a certificate and then you are like, check the box, no. But then you have to establish in such a good way of farming that your neighbor perhaps will kind of adopt to this approach. So we're looking at actually a wider landscape approach. It means that in an area where you have sustainable farm, blah, 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 but then when you look at, let's say, 1 kilometer from that, and you see the whole area is actually deforested, what does it mean? The certificate doesn't mean nothing. So it has to come from a broader approach, which I would say some sort of landscape approach, with harmonization with different crops, probably rubber hand in hand with palm oil and probably other crops. This is my simple point of view. Thank you.
Baik, untuk sertifikasi justru inilah kami baru mau melangkah. Dengan sertifikasi kita terbuka semuanya. Kemudian juga dengan sertifikasi RSPO ini bukan kami tidak puas hanya di sertifikasi RSPO. Dengan sertifikat RSPO, petani akan terbuka semuanya, kemudian juga akan masa depannya juga akan tertata. Jadi saya juga berharap kepada petani yang lain bisa mengikuti tentang sertifikasi ini. Dengan sertifikasi, peluang ataupun kesempatan ilmu pengetahuan di situ kita akan kita dapatkan.
For Amanah Cooperative, they see that certification, in this case RSPO certification, merely as a step that already open up so many opportunities for them to grow, to expand, and they also expect that certification can also be applicable to the other independent smallholders in Indonesia. Tadi itu ya. And if I also may add a bit, WWF Indonesia has never had any intention to certify all smallholders in Indonesia. It's about 4 million hectares, and we believe that if all parties all together having smallholders program certification, we won't be able to do the facilitation for all these 4 million hectares of certification. So our intervention strategy is really to have different models of the approach with the independent smallholders in Indonesia. We started with the one in Riau, and then we're expanding to the other areas as well, with different targeted impact. And I concur with my colleague from Solidaridad that this is the era to address the issue, the sustainability issue at landscape level. I believe that my colleague from the IDH, the Earth Innovation Institute, are already having concrete example of what so-called jurisdictional approach. IDH is working in South Sumatra, and Earth Innovation Institute is working in Central Kalimantan, Surian district. And now we started in West Kalimantan, Kapuasulu district, with the supporting buffer of the smallholder supply chain from the surrounding district, Sanggau, Sintang, Skadau. So back to the question is the certification as the end goal? It's definitely not. And beyond our initial intention, it's actually, I took this statement from Pak Narno. It creates many opportunities, many lessons learned during the journey and helping the communities certified. So the challenges is snowballing now, and we have to be more smart in creating innovative, basically to help alleviate the poverty in Indonesia and elsewhere.
So following up on that, I have a question from Helena Vaki asking, I mean, you mentioned that certification is a first step forward that brings a lot of benefits to the members of Amanah Cooperative. So how much did certification cost? And how much additional profit did the certification bring you and your group? Are you able to give us some figures?
Baik, untuk kos persiapan sertifikasi, kemarin awal kami dibantu oleh Carrefour Foundation, kemudian didamping oleh WWF, ada juga dari perusahaan. Jadi untuk kos saya kurang begitu memahami untuk persiapan awal. Kemudian untuk juga ada selanjutnya tentang surveillance, kos itu juga akan ditanggung oleh asosiasi sendiri. Dan ini untuk surveillance untuk Amanah udah yang ketiga. Dan biaya itu juga kami dapatkan dari atas dasar hasil usaha untuk asosiasi itu sendiri.
Basically the initial process for certification, the scoping and the assessment was assisted by the Carrefour Foundation and WWF, while the annual audit for the surveillance, they covered from their own fund. He thinks that it's not necessary to mention the specific amount, the specific cost that paid to the certification bodies. And if I may add a bit about the certification cost, the cost is very much depending on the different variable, how remote the area is and how is prepared and how many major gaps or major corrective action request from the certification bodies. So it varies. Amanah actually takes the early bird advantage because the cost is also included as the pro bono service from the certification body. They took the certification process as part of their lesson learned and internal capacity building as well. Yeah. Kalau dari keuntungan.
Kemudian untuk yang keuntungan yang kami dapat, yang pertama kita dapat ilmu, kita juga punya program jangka pendek, kemudian ada juga program jangka panjang, kemudian juga kita bisa mempersiapkan untuk replanting, kita sudah tertata dengan adanya ikut sertifikasi RSPO itu. Kemudian sisi lain juga yang kami dapatkan, panen juga akan lebih baik, kita juga ikut melestarikan lingkungan, kemudian juga harga, ada penambahan, dan masih banyak keuntungan yang kita dapatkan.
Basically, the benefit exceeds the profit from this having certification. What they enjoy actually, they reach a better management system. They understand how to do all the business process in managing the plantations from the and even up to the replanting. So they see that the benefits from having the certification really outweighs the profit itself from selling the certificate.
So there are, I mean, these sort of in the benefits actually in the end do translate into economic profits, better profits for them because that will lead to better use, better agricultural practices, for instance.
And they also have a more efficient fertilizer application compared to the period before they are applying the certification itself. And they set up a group, the fertilizer application unit. And in the past, they do the fertilizing process individually. Now they do under a group, and they feel it's more efficient in terms of the cost.
The issue of males was brought up by you, and I wanted to now probably ask Henry for his opinion. Stephan, please feel free to chip in as well. One of the challenges that the smallholders face, those who are already producing in a very, who are certified producers, is there is a challenge in finding adequate certified males to sell their produce to, and that eventually end up, hurting their profits. So how real is this challenge on the ground in both Indonesia and Malaysia?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned is that we have actually different ground challenges because some of our site, like West Kalimantan, they have really good yields from this intervention. They have like OER of, I would say, 20%, which usually an average smallholder will be doing at about 17-18%. And again, there is no presence of so-called certified mills in the area. On the other hand, we also face a little bit of problem in the provinces like Jambi, where we have the presence of these mills, and we have good kind of fresh fruit bunch, which is some of them are like 21% of OER. But then because of this grading system of some mills, which is, I would say, need a lot more of homework. They have to kind of grade these based on the quality of the fruits, because what I know so far is that most mill is grading on the origin of the fruit. They might be grading differently for the fruit coming out from plasma farmers, and then special treatment is given to I don't know nucleus, but then the independent fruits from these independent smallholders are usually at the bottom of the class. So what I think is actually I don't know whether at this stage a intervention from government is needed, in order to give good FFB, good OER, and sustainably produce a special price. Let's forget about premium from these buyers. Let's talk real thing, adding up to, I would say a little bit $1 is actually meaning something to tell apart. This is actually produced sustainably, and the other ones are like, I won't say non-sustainable, but not of clear origin. So that will make a difference, and this will fuel, the spirit for this independent smallholder to kind of do more, for the environment. So that's how I see it.
Stephan, do you think government intervention is necessary here?
I think we make the mistake again and again that we look at a piece of the puzzle only. You asked before, is the focus only on RSPO certification for a small producer? Totally not. For me, it goes beyond, absolutely beyond. So as I said, now he's absolutely right. I saw that actually in our project that people also started to now differentiate the grade, what's coming from the small producer, what's coming from the own plantation, whatever. If you want to overcome that, in my view, the best way, maybe not the only way, but the best way is a collaborative model, is where you put the whole value chain in. You make sure, for a small producer, normally the starting point is, why should I do it? What's in it for me? Where is the advantage? So it starts like, as you said, certification, maybe it's not tremendous cost, but it's huge cost for a small producer, and he would have to make an investment into uncertainty. Why should he do it? So in sports, for example, we put this in a 5-year contract, the whole value chain. So there is no risk of the upfront payment because he has a 5-year guarantee for the outlet. So we guarantee him the payback which comes from yield improvement, from better use of agrochemicals, for more efficient, effective presence, management of the plantation, etc. So it's guaranteed. Once you have done that, there is a willingness. Once the willingness is there, you upgrade the whole system. And for me, RSPO certification of mass balance of the small producer is an output. It's an element. It's an output of the process that you document that this complies to certain standards. But it's not the ambition of what we want to do and change, and what our small producers, the people which I talked to, the people when we launched it in November in KL at the RSPO Summit, smiled about, what they would be proud about. It's not just a certificate as such. It's being part of a value chain which is sustainable over a period of time, not for a day. And again, sometimes we only focus on this one interface. Ask what can the governments do more. Of course, you have multiple aspects, but I believe collaborative models cross the value chain are a very, very good model.
I'm sure we'll come back to this collaborative model later in the discussion, but now I would like to perhaps address a burning issue. That is, smallholders have been actually accused of causing the haze crisis last year. So I guess my question for Pak Nano here is, how would you respond to this? The allegation that smallholders were primarily responsible for much of the forest and peat fires last year in Indonesia.
Saya rasa itu kurang pas atas dasar mungkin isu. Memang pemicu utama orang berasumsi bahwasanya orang membuka lahan ataupun petani swadaya sebenarnya itu tidak benar. Secara logika juga petani tidak akan membakar dia punya lahan. Dan rata-rata di wilayah Sumatera adalah banyak lahan gambut dangkal Kemudian juga tanpa unsur kesengajaan mereka membuang bisa juga puntung rokok atau yang lain, dan itu salah satu pemicu kebakaran. Kemudian juga kalau semua itu ikut pelatihan tentang sertifikasi, pasti juga macam di Asosiasi Amanah kami punya tim, dan tim itu ketika ada terjadi
in brief, that the accusation is not completely true, though there's some belief that one of the triggers for the land fire in Sumatra is the smallholders. But what he sees in his village, that there is no way that the smallholders burn their own plantations. That's the cases that occurred. Actually, there are areas with deep peatlands, and there are some accident where the farmers trigger the fire without any purpose. Bisa dilanjutkan?
Kemudian kalaupun petani swadi ikut sertifikasi, dikenalkan dengan sertifikasi, pasti mereka punya tim. Nah, tim ini mereka akan dikerjakan secara sukarela. Jadi mereka juga ikut bertanggung jawab menjaga kelestarian lingkungan. Tidak hanya mengawasi wilayah dia sendiri, mereka juga memikirkan wilayah lain. Contohnya kayak Amanah punya tim itu ikut menjaga kelestarian lingkungan. Apabila terjadi kebakaran di wilayah sekitaran kebun asosiasi, mereka ikut bertanggung jawab untuk menjaga seandainya terjadi kebakaran itu sendiri.
He provides an example in his cooperative. There is a special unit to tackle the forest fire. This special unit is not only responsible for their own plantations, but they also stand by for providing support in suppressing the fire in the surrounding villages and also in the adjacent areas. Sorry, I overlooked one point, that when a group of farmers is introduced with the certification standard, they are required to understand on the precautionary measures in tackling the forest fire, how to mitigate the forest fire, and also how to suppress when it eventually occurred in their area, and it also affects their performance as the certificate holder.
Hendry, would you have more to add based on your experience with the smallholders?
Yeah. Well, from my visits, I'm a smallholder guy, so I just came in from Jambi 2 days ago. I think even though we imposed a lot of don'ts on them, I think even though they have like this certifications stuff, there is a case from in this village whereas a smallholder farmer is actually going through a certification, but then hey, here comes the relatives, the far off relative like his uncle, and then say, hey, you know what, I want to plant some palm oil like you. I want to earn decent income from my less than $2.5 per day. Yeah? So what do I do? And first thing he does is that okay, then you need a plot of land, let's say 2 hectares or something, and then wow, this new guy is actually converting his rubber tree into palm oil just like that. So I would say it's a learning by doing in a positive way, which means that these original smallholders who are going through certification should at least advise that's not the way to do it. No slash and burn. So I think this needs a lot of work, especially to guide them, to mentor them. And I would say to use the social media term so that this approach is viral. So people need to realize that, yes, you can move from one state of economy to a better one by doing the right stuff on the ground for the environment. Then the money you earn is actually, I would say the word blessed, because you do it rightfully. So this is my point of view. It might be different from every cases because Indonesia, we are talking about, I don't know, 3 million smallholders. It would take an army of good agricultural practice experts, to turn this, in a given time. So thank you very much.
There is actually a question from Rachel Kamanta from C4 about, related to fire use and management again. So as RSPO members, what are the specific measures on the ground related to fire use and management? What are the guidelines, if you are an RSPO member when it comes to fire management? Is that something that the Amanah Cooperative members are familiar with?
Untuk pengelolaan kebakaran di Amanah dia ada mekanisme. Mekanisme apabila terjadi kebakaran dan kemudian mekanisme ketika ada wilayah lain di luar wilayah Amanah itu terjadi kebakaran. Di situ tadi saya bilang Amanah punya tim. Nah, tim inilah bekerja secara sukarela. Kami punya tim beranggotakan 15 orang. Ada ketua dan ada dibagi beberapa seksi tim itu sendiri.
As a RSPO member, the Amanah Cooperative has a special unit for forest fire management. There are 15 members of the communities who is assigned as the core team, and the responsibility is divided into two. First one is for the internal forest fire cases, and the second is for the external forest fire. So the level of the responsibility is different. But as a RSPO member, they are not only responsible to secure their own areas from the forest fire, but also they are somehow obliged to help the area surrounding their plantations from the forest fire. And as he mentioned earlier, that this team is working with the neighboring villages to manage the forest fire.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to open up the floor to questions. If anyone would like to pose a question directly to the speakers. I've got one hand over there, is another on my left side. So I think I can take 3 questions. Can I have the first question from Ibu Ross, I think?
Yes, Lee, I hope you do not cut me in the middle when I'm talking. I have experience on processing certification for ISPO. Actually, Amanah is in the process of ISPO, but Pak Sunarno did not mention it. We have difficulty in certifying independent smallholders because there are so many category independent smallholders, and the government do not want to certify the illegal smallholder, which is land resulted from encroaching forests. So what I want to ask question to Pak Hendry, what category that are you helping these people to be certified? I'm so afraid that NGO, many other international organizations do not think of people who are encroaching forests are illegal. You see, if you are supporting these people, then the independent smallholder will increase so much in a very short time. So in case of Pak Nano, he's not a good example of independent smallholder. Because Sunarno is actually starting with transmigration, with the land is given by the government. Independent smallholder, mostly they buy themselves or they encroach the forest. So that's what I'm really would like to know. What is the basic standard are using by Hendry when they are thinking to process or to help smallholder? Because most of smallholder in Indonesia, especially independent, are producing dura, which is the oil content of the fruits is very small. Whatever you give to it, whatever fertilizer you give to the trees, it will not increase the production more than 2 tons per hectare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Ros. And the question over there from the gentleman. Could you introduce yourself before asking the question as well?
Thank you. My name is Tint. I'm Executive Director of the Center for People and Forests, also the Regional Community Forestry Training Center in Thailand. I just want to ask a question. Actually, this is the issue that we are facing, especially talking about the smallholder business sector. I just want to get, because this is one of the dimensions we are lacking here is talking about the tenure issue. Because most of the smallholders, when they are competing the land, they always need to compete with their tenure, especially with the large-scale player. Do you have any conflict, dealing this kind of situation in the ground? If you do have, what sort of mechanism and what sort of the capacity you do have in the ground? This is one of my clarification. Another thing is, in most of the time, when you talk about the small players, there are a lot of the elite capture. Trying to use the land, very limited land available in the rural area, but actually it's not really talking for the landless people or not talking about the very disadvantaged people. There are many elite group of the people trying to grab this kind of the opportunity. Do you have this kind of situation in the ground when you talk about the smallholder, and how do you deal this kind of situation as well? Thank you.
Do I see a third question? Okay, I have 2 hands. I think I've got time. So the lady just in front of me first, or okay, maybe the gentleman in the back first.
I thought it was the lady first.
It's Sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Adrian.
Okay. Adrian from Neste, Singapore. Just questions I think was not mentioned. One for the speakers and one especially for Bapak, if you don't mind. Just regarding IPOP, the proponents for IPOP already always mention smallholders as a factor. The opponents also mention smallholders as a factor. Just like to hear from the people supporting smallholders, how do you see IPOP in the biggest picture where you're doing it? For Bapak, I'm going to do it in English and I'll translate to Indonesian. What do you think is your biggest problem? How do you see replanting? Menurut Bapak, masalah yang paling besar apa Pak? Apa replanting menjadi satu masalah buat Bapak di masa depan? Thank you.
Okay, and final question from the lady.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kavita Prakashmani. I'm Executive Director of Grow Asia. I think it's actually a good follow-up question because I was curious to hear from the panel how replanting is being financed for smallholder farmers, because we all know that the trees are old or actually the wrong variety. We do need to be able to get farmers, smallholder farmers, to be replanting, but there's a gap in the production time, so you have 4 or 5 years where there is no production, so you have a lack of income. That is a very strong disincentive to the smallholders farmers to actually replant, but we do need them to be changing the stock. So is there any innovative financing? I think credit unions were mentioned, but what is being done at scale or what could be done at scale? Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got actually 5 questions. So one for Hendry about how we can help independent smallholders become certified due to reluctance of the government to actually certify illegal smallholders. And then we've got questions related to territorial conflict in Indonesia, which is actually a very real problem, as well as land grabbing by local elites. What are the mechanisms that we can address some of these challenges? And then someone would like to hear the views of the panelists on IPOP. Because it's been accused of basically being unfair to smallholders and potentially cutting off their livelihoods. And finally, on how replanting, how do we find innovative financing when it comes to replanting for smallholders? Can I start with you, Henry?
Thank you, Bu Rosdiana. Yes, we in Solidaridad, we do have this bond with the local partners. Let me give an instance. One of the projects in West Kalimantan, we do work with a credit union, which is made out of 160,000 smallholders. Major of them are like rubber farmers, but others are palm oil. Yes, we do have problems. Of course, problem exists when it comes to illegal smallholders. So I think I will put it in Bahasa Indonesia pretty simply, and then I'll translate in English. What we do is we like makan bubur pelan-pelan. Jadi yang panas dulu, yang agak dingin dulu dimakan, terus yang panas-panas itu dicicil gitu loh. In literally, it means that we approach this like eating a bowl of hot porridge. You know, it means like you eat the colder part first, and then slowly moving into the hotter part. So what we do is actually we identify those people who are actually adjacent or inside or actually encroaching. So they are categories and with different approach. Yeah. So for the adjacent ones, I think what we do is actually plot them where they are, how close are you to the forest. If you want to get our support in terms of financial access, fertilizer access, GAP training, then you have to commit. You have to deliver, otherwise we take all them away. And I don't think that you can survive because getting a correct a good fertilizer, a good seedling in the areas, in the remote areas of West Kalimantan is not easy. So that is the first phase we do. What about the ones who are already in the forested area? Yes, this will require policy related work. I think we have to consult the Bupati of this one area, or probably the governor. I think INPOP, not IPOP, INPOP actually is a government platform under Working Group 2 is actually working pretty hard to sort this out. I would say some proposition like land swap is might be the way out. So in terms of the ones who are actually encroaching already in this forested area, we are still looking forward to the guidance of the Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture, especially INPOP, Working Group 2. So we will actually do what will be necessary. Replanting, Dura, yes. Dura gives you max 2 tons, was it? And then, yeah, we do have problems in our projects. We have Dura plants, and in West Kalimantan, some of our farmers are actually planting that, but then it almost reaches the age of 20, so it has to be replaced. And our farmer, fortunately, has the saving account with this credit union, so-called Keling Kumang, and then they can kind of access to that one. But for general, I think Indonesia has this CPO fund policy recently established under Mr. Bayu, so that I believe these could actually use to address of this problem. Thank you.
Your views of
maybe just a comment also on the replantation cycle, which is just, again, one of several very important problems which you have to face when you go on the ground. But that's why I come back. First is cycle. It's not a singular one interface RSPO certification of one small producer. In our case, it's a 5-year project. So that's not the answer to the replantation problem as such, but it's meaning we take it more holistic. Second is, if I was impressed, I mean, I don't have a 20-year oleochemical or palm oil background, but I was impressed when I visited Sabah and I saw the huge difference between a professionally big company managed plantation and a small producer plantation, just by the allotment of trees. So if you change that plantation raster in a way that you become much more efficient. There is ways which we're discussing now between Wilma and the experts, actually not me, Wilma and the small producers, how they could, even if they change the way they actually occupy and yield their hectares, that they can actually have aerial replantation. And the third one is actually, look at it as a delta, because it's a problem already today. So that's where we get them on board, that we say the replantation is a problem already today. If you don't do it, your yield goes anyway down. Year by year by year, you're becoming less and less efficient. So it's a financial problem anyway. So I would say putting it in a longer cycle, 5 years, giving them ways to improve yield and plantation management, and then also showing that in Delta they don't losing on that one, even if we don't have the holy cow answer to this question also, honestly speaking, is the way we get them on board.
We're running out of time, so I will ask Pak Nano to basically give his views on some of the questions posed to him.
Saya rasa untuk replanting bagi Amanah sebenarnya masalah, tapi tidak seberapa masalah. Karena kita udah punya program jangka pendek dan jangka panjang. Untuk replanting dana itu udah kita sisihkan untuk persiapan replanting. Kemudian juga untuk saat ini dari pihak pemerintah ada dana BPDB. Tapi kemudian untuk saatnya Amanah replanting kita juga nggak tahu. Tapi yang paling tidak kita untuk mempersiapkan diri kita untuk replanting yang akan datang. Sisi lain untuk masa replanting menjelang TM atau tanaman menghasilkan, Amanah sudah mempersiapkan di unit usaha, kemudian unit usaha itu akan ditangguhkan pembagian hasil, dan hasil itu akan dibagi ketika masa grace period replanting itu.
For Amanah Cooperative, replanting they admit it is a challenge, but it's not the biggest challenge that they cannot overcome. So for the cost for the replanting, they already plan by set asiding their income for the replanting cost, and also very recently that a newly government body CPO support fund is also helping the replanting program. In regard to the grace period, the Amanah Cooperative also has prepared a specific business unit as the diversification of this their business development to prepare and help support the members during the grace period. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid we've ran out of time for this panel discussion, but I do encourage the delegates to continue this conversation with the panelists over a coffee break at the end of the conference later at 5 p.m. Now I'd like to thank my panelists for being here with us and for sharing your views. Thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. Thanks.